What first-party games could Sony realistically bring to the PlayStation VR2 that would sell systems? So I made a list, though there are some rules. Okay, so I wanted to make this as realistic as possible, so I fruit the notion of having an Uncharted or any narrative-heavy games in the list. Sorry, Joel from The Last of Us, you're sitting this one out. It's not that these games couldn't happen, I just think they would be heavily altered from the source material, like Horizon with Call of the Mountain, rather than a straight-up adaptation of the game itself. So for this to work, we actually need games that make sense with the jump to VR, and not just shoehorned in. However, my first suggestion might just surprise you. So back in 2019, Sony Pictures and PlayStation Productions began work on a TV show to the popular video game Twisted Metal, a game which is centered around the Twisted Metal competition, which is basically a demolition derby with insane vehicles loaded with rockets, machine guns, and more. So it's been a while since we last seen a Twisted Metal game, and this honestly makes a lot of sense for VR. In late 2022, Naughty Dog released The Last of Us Part 1, which was a remake to their hit game to launch shortly before the HBO adaptation of the show. And with a new Horizon show on the horizon, there's been rumours abound for a remake there as well. So with a new Twisted Metal show in the works, it makes sense for a new game to be released, especially one for Sony's new virtual reality system. Okay, so this one's a bit more interesting, and to be fair, I don't think the jump to first-person VR would affect it too much. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest PS5 games, and one I think would be a top-notch addition to PSVR 2, and that game is Returnal. Now, Returnal is actually a game that I honestly think would be insane on the PSVR 2. The game is mostly played in a third-person perspective, but there are some scenes that are played in first person, albeit they are quite narrative heavy. Imagine running through the world of Returnal in first person, you're using your boost, running past enemies in a bullet hell biome with a variety of weapons at your disposal. Honestly, that might be enough to make your stomach churn, but could honestly be a game changer for the PSVR 2 system. Not to mention, Housemarque brought a co-op update to the game for some multiplayer fun with your mates too. This is one that I actually think has a solid chance to come to VR in the future. The chances of the next one happening, in my opinion, are actually quite slim. Though in the grand scheme of things, it actually makes sense and would 100% blow my mind personally in virtual reality. So in 2017, Blue Point Games recreated one of the most highly acclaimed and beloved video games of all time. One that is absolutely breathtaking to play, and that game is Shadow of the Colossus. In Shadow of the Colossus, you play as Wander, a man who is tasked with finding and killing 16 huge colossal enemies to resurrect a sacrificed girl named Mono. With Shadow of the Colossus, you roam a gorgeous open world and skill these huge colossi beasts. Playing in VR would be absolutely breathtaking, not just for the graphics in the world itself, which are outstanding, but the jaw-dropping size of the bosses you take on around the world. VR would enhance the experience of Shadow of the Colossus tenfold, and could create perhaps the most immersive VR experience to date. Though if you hit height, you're f***ed. So the last game on my list, the one that I believe could sell PSVR 2 systems by the bucket load, if done right, is Destiny 2, or whatever the devs want to create next. Okay, boys and girls, unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the past year, Sony purchased Destiny developer Bungie. Yep, the guys who created Halo, for God's sakes. You know, the game that literally put Xbox on the map. So this could go either way. They put Destiny 2 to VR, which, let's face it, if done to the Bungie standard, could literally be the best VR game ever, if not for sheer replayability of being a multiplayer game that you come back to daily, or just letting the next game that Bungie develop be built with VR and flat screen gaming in mind. Now, there are a good few multiplayer VR games out there. I myself, personally, had a slight addiction to 11 VR. The table tennis game, but something like Destiny, a game that is essentially MMO-like, but not really an MMO, could take over your life in VR and just come back to it daily, like many of millions of people already do. Bungie would be the prime VR developers. Their gameplay is always created to the highest standard, and not to mention, the worlds that they can create are absolutely breathtaking. Now, the caveat here is Destiny 2 is a bit difficult to get into in this state. However, if Bungie dips their toes into the water with VR as an add-on with Destiny, and then build their next game with VR in mind, I think we could see the shift towards VR gaming that is needed. So what's your thoughts? Do you disagree with what I mentioned? Let me know in the comments below what games you think would sell PSVR 2 systems. As always, if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe or watch the many clips on this channel.